right, without any further ado, we're going to get into the meat of today's meeting, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to my friend Andrew Kuderer of CorTalent. Today, Andrew is going to be sharing with us a very timely topic. Raise your hand if hiring is an important part of your business this year. Okay, I mean, growing businesses rely on great people, and nobody knows that better than CorTalent. And we, as fractional CMOs, are often working with clients to build their marketing teams, and we see firsthand how challenging it is to match client expectations with talent when they want a unicorn. But today, CorTalent is going to share with us how to hire the right person for the right seat, hire that stallion, that hardworking person, and help shape them into a unicorn. I have not heard their content in advance of today's meeting, but I am paying close attention because I think this is going to be very, very relevant. So Andrew, I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to invite you to go ahead and start yours and grab the virtual mic. Take it away.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. I will get my screen share up and running right now. So let me know, can everybody see the title slide page? Jennifer, can you see that? Yep, okay, perfect. Awesome, thank you. Thanks for having us. Everybody, as Jennifer said, I am Andrew Kuderer, I'm from CorTalent. I'm the Senior Client Success Manager at CorTalent. Our owner, Mary Nutting, is on the meeting as well. Today, we're going to be talking about hiring a stallion, but developing that unicorn. I know there's a variety of folks on the meeting today from a variety of companies, all different shapes and sizes. So I hope everybody can find at least one takeaway from our content today to take back and implement. So to start off, I have a question for everybody. Your company's controller walks in and says, I've decided I'm going to retire early. They also mention I've got a family situation and can't be here for a long transition. What do you do? Another question, another situation. Your top salesperson asks to grab a cup of coffee and immediately you go, oh no, they got offered an opportunity that was way too lucrative to pass up at another company. What's your next step? If these situations give you a little bit of anxiety, then it's time to start thinking about hiring and recruiting a little bit differently. So to start off, let's talk about the Great Resignation. Everybody's heard of it. It's probably on everybody's business bingo cards right now as the center square, but what really is it? Well, 48% of the working population in the US is actively searching or looking for new opportunities right now. That is a huge amount of people. The working population is roughly 160 million people in the United States. So that's almost 80 million people looking for new opportunities or at least open to talking to somebody about one. Global employee engagement right now, 20% in the United States and 34% in Canada, those numbers are drastically low. And obviously the pandemic has something to do with it, but they were dropping before the pandemic as well. The lost productivity of not engaged and actively disengaged employees is equal to 18% of their annual salary for a business. That's a huge expense. So how much does it cost? For a company of 10,000 people, and obviously there's companies on here that are not 10,000, but in a relative scale, with employees at an average salary of 50,000 each, disengagement costs $60 million a year. So obviously take that to scale for your own business, but it's a huge expense for businesses, right? And replacing workers requires 1.5 to 2 times the employee's annual salary. Some people may have heard this stuff before, but on average, it costs $9,000 a year to keep a disengaged worker and between $25,000 and $100,000 to replace them. Those are huge costs to your businesses. So how do we get past this? Some upfront recruiting and traditional recruiting methods, right? Maybe we're creating and posting our job descriptions and our job postings online to sites like Indeed or ZipRecruiter, job boards like that. Well, applicants are going to Google their job title and they're going to find 20 different variations that try to appeal to the perfect candidate. How are our job postings differentiating themselves? Are we creating job postings that applicants can relate to? right? They can envision themselves working for your company based on what you write in that job posting. How are we standing out amidst all the other clutter when people are looking at those postings, right? Then we start to filter through applicants. You know, we post our jobs, and if we're not really clear on what we want or who we want up front, then we're going to spend significant time disqualifying those unqualified candidates in our process. Well, we want to see the most qualified candidates up front. So how do we get really crystal clear, even in the job posting, of who we want, right? And then maybe we're proactively recruiting through our network. This could be a great tool. You get referrals from maybe some employees in the company or other business leaders you know around the community. But sometimes we're spending a lot of time talking through candidate referrals from people who don't really know your business. They don't know really what's going on or who succeeds inside of your business. So we have to be really careful with how much time we're spending on those methods as well. Let's talk about doing some alternative hiring methods or doing the upfront work a little bit differently. Maybe some things that we haven't thought of before. Yes, we want to network with peers about but we want to network about what they look for in possible candidates or how they're finding. Let's try to get inspired by networking with our possible peers, and then we can start to understand what our business can do to implement to help ourselves. We want to explore ways to attract talent that gets it and wants it. Obviously, a very popular saying in this group, and has the drive to achieve it. It's really important that we look beyond the classic industry experience or so many years of experience. We want to find people that get it. They have the horsepower. We're hiring a Stallion, remember. They have the horsepower that get it, and they want to understand it. They want to work and learn to succeed about it. That drive and that motivation is huge. We want to understand what options are out there for recruiting and staffing, and which direction to lean on depending on what position you're hiring for. There are so many different types of recruiting and staffing companies out there. Which one is going to be right for the position that you're hiring for and for your company, right? It could be for production positions. It could be for high-level positions. They're all different types of recruiting. So next, you want to create a relationship with a trusted recruiting partner that can help at multiple levels, right? And no, this is not a first option. It's a contingency plan. If you have hit in this last bullet, if you've hit your specific timeline for your hiring, what's your plan B? Make sure you have a relationship with a trusted partner who, one, can help you out at the levels that you're going to need help at, but then two, will tell you where they can't help, and they're able to give you resources to be able to help you out in those areas. Next, let's talk about creating that staff, or creating that unicorn, I should say, molding the people that do get it and want it, right? So if we're hiring outside of the traditional industry experience or years of experience in the job, yes, they need to be able to do the job, but how do we mold them to do it, right? If they're motivated to do it. We want to create opportunities to work alongside the executive or management teams on certain projects. Large companies do this all the time. They have internal job shadow programs where people can go around and work with all different types of people on those teams, those management teams, so they can understand the different areas of the business. Give people opportunities to see the inner workings and what goes on so they can know the how and the why behind what they're doing. Give a budget for personal development in areas where this person is interested, right? Understand where this person's interested and let them explore and own their own narrative, right? Don't be afraid to continue to shift the person's role based on their interest and motivations. And have these tough conversations with your people, right? Like I said, have them own the narrative. Let them tell you what they're interested in. Yes, it needs to be a balance, and the company needs to have a say in what they're going to do as well. But if we allow them to go into areas where they're interested, it's only going to motivate them further. And then succession planning. This is a big one we see with our clients. It's no longer for leadership teams, right? Do we have a succession plan in place for high-risk people and roles? There's probably a role in every business, small or large, where we couldn't even put a job description out there for what this person does, right? So what would happen if that person left? We need to have a plan B just in case. Doing the prep work, right? We need to put together a detailed profile. So let's get crystal clear up front. What are the must-haves, and not 10 to 20 must-haves? What are the 3 to 5 must-haves of this role? What questions aren't we asking that we should be asking about this role and about the person that succeeds in this role? What does our role require day to day? Let's get crystal clear on those day-to-day responsibilities so that we understand what this person needs to have, and then also where this person can be creative and innovate inside of their own role. Give them that opportunity. How do we want this role to be done? right? We need to be able to envision how this role gets done day to day, month to month, year to year. And then what kind of person succeeds in our company? We'll talk about this a little bit later, but what personality profile inside of our company truly succeeds and fits into our culture? And then setting the hook up front, writing a job description that sells. Again, let those candidates envision themselves in your company. They can relate to exactly what you're saying and they can see themselves in the role before they even apply. Do we have a candidate database? If we're doing our upfront recruiting for a job, but we know we're going to open that same job 3 months later, let's save this candidate data. Hopefully you have some sort of system that does that, but even in an Excel spreadsheet, right? So we can proactively go out and message these folks and say, hey, we're going to be opening up this role again in a week. Would you be interested in having another conversation about it? And then we're mapping out what our recruiting process looks like, right? We're getting crystal clear on who is involved in that process. And, if it's 6, 7, 8 interviews or 8 people that need to be involved, then maybe we need to cut it down and we need to make sure that we are being efficient. In today's market, things are moving fast. People are getting offers in a couple weeks once they're presented. So we need to be sure on what we're doing. And then we're identifying comp ranges that are appropriate value for the position in the market. We see clients all the time that want to hire a position and then give a comp range that with what their criteria is, the comp range is not, it doesn't match up. It doesn't align. So we need to make sure that what we're asking for, we're aligning our comp with that, with those asks in the market. So a couple more things. How do we know what we're looking for and how are we validating what we're seeing in these candidates, right? So now we're talking about recruiting again. Let's go into assessments. So there may be some folks on here that use assessments for hiring, maybe some don't. A lot of you have probably heard about a bunch of assessments, but what are they, right? We'll talk about ipsative versus normative assessments and the difference and when they should be used. Which are better for the hiring process and which are better for post-hire? Do we give someone a project to complete on top of an assessment, right? It's time consuming, but does it give us more insight into how this person's going to be successful in our organization? Are our assessments a knockout tool or are they a validator for what we're seeing in our process? And then lastly, what do we want to assess for? And that's a big question that we need to answer. So let's start with ipsative assessments. Ipsative assessments, the purpose of them is to measure a person against their own previous performance. So these types of assessments do not take into account the general population or a group of people, and therefore it's best used as an individual measuring metric. So individual ipsative. In a business lens, they're great for development and awareness post-hire. They can help a person understand themselves further and understand their coworkers as well to a greater degree. Some examples, some assessments we've all heard of: DISC, Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finders. These are great tools. They're awesome for awareness, individual awareness and team awareness as well. But again, they do not measure against the general population or a group of people. Whereas normative assessments, they compare an individual's performance to others in a group, like the general working population. The purpose of these assessments is to measure whether someone scores above or below the average of the group. So normative assessments are a great tool in attempting to gain quantitative data to validate a theory. So again, in a business lens, great for pre-hire testing. Normative assessments are great for pre-hire testing. They can measure a person in different areas against working population to give a company an idea of how this person compares to their peers, right? And this ultimately gives us a clear picture of job fit and predictive performance. Some examples here: Hogan, Wonderlic. If anybody's an NFL fan, you've heard of Wonderlic. They use it in the combine. And then also Preview is another example of a normative assessment. Now, what do we assess for? Again, this is a huge question to ask. And the number one predictor of performance in a role that we see is cognitive ability. Not necessarily an IQ test, but does this person have the horsepower to get up to speed quickly, right? Do they have the speed of reasoning that allows them to be successful in their role, that leads to quick problem solving, it leads them to be able to shift the paradigm when they're looking at a situation to make sure that the problem is in their favor so they can solve it quickly, right? And then what are the critical abilities for the role as well? Do they need to be proficient in working with numbers, working with words? Do they need spatial reasoning? What are we really assessing for in that cognitive area that's critical for the role? And then the motivations and interests. Here we're looking for retention. The day-to-day responsibilities. Again, if we're getting clear on day-to-day responsibilities, we will know what motivations and interests we need to assess for to understand if this person's going to be, they're going to be in every single day to do these things, and they're going to get out of bed to come do them, come to work and do them. And if not, if they're not motivated to do these day-to-day responsibilities, will our culture suffer? Will they affect the working environment and their coworkers? How long will they stick? Remember those costs to refill a position. We need to align the motivations and interests with what the job is asking for. Now, again, what do we assess for? Personality. There are so many different personality tests out there, hundreds of them, and they all come back to these 5 principles, the ocean principles, right? Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And this is these are psychological principles that people will be assessed for in every single personality test. So openness, a high level of openness is very creative. They're happy to learn about new concepts or abstract ideas, but maybe a low level of openness, they dislike change, they resist new ideas, they're not very imaginative, things like that. So what do we need for this certain role? Again, conscientiousness. They spend time preparing, they pay attention to detail, they enjoy having a set schedule. A low level of conscientiousness, they dislike structures and schedules, they procrastinate, things like that, right? So maybe a little bit more of a creative type. Extroversion, high level, they enjoy being the center of attention, they feel energized when others are around, and sometimes they even say things before thinking of them. Low level of extroversion, they prefer solitude, feel exhausted when socializing, they find it difficult to start conversations, they don't like making small talk, so maybe more of an individual contributor, right?
Hey, Andrew, sorry to interrupt, but I know we're approaching our 15 minutes, so just swing through the last slides quickly.
Thanks for the heads up, Mary. Well, let's go to what we assess for. So when we assess personality, there's thousands of tests, but what are we really looking for, right? How will this person work within our team is huge, right? Does this person have the awareness to connect at a personal and professional level so they can associate that feeling with our business? Right? That's a huge question to ask. Here's an example of a report that shows cognitive ability up top, motivations and interests and personality. A person's results are circled numbers here, and the benchmark for our company culture and our role are these green shaded boxes right there. And then we're looking at it in a workplace characteristic report here as well. Do we need somebody who lives to work or works to live, right? Or do we need somebody who's relationship focused or self-focused? These are all critical scales depending on what role we're hiring for. We want to match that up with what role we're hiring for and what person we're looking for. The one huge slide that I want to show here about assessments is, this is from the Harvard Business Review, the most effective in hiring selection practices. From a scale from 0 to 1, multi-measure tests tested highest to predict job performance, right? So again, cognitive ability, personality, and motivations and interests. And you can see that job experience and just personality tests are way down on this list. So when we're doing assessing for a role in our hiring process, we want to make sure that we're doing multi-measure tests to make sure this person fits with everything we're looking for inside of the role and our company. We're going to go to some parting ideas to think about quickly. We know most organizations that go through a reforecast end up cutting training and development. It should be looked at as a pivotal piece of the talent strategy, right? After interviewing thousands of candidates every year, one of the biggest faults is mismanagement of a person's performance. If they're killing it, do they know it? We spend time with everybody, our problem employees that we think we need to fix, but we need to spend equal amount of time with the people that are succeeding and driving our business because they're the ones that we want to keep, right? And then comp needs change from time to time based on a unique situation. It's okay to have internal inequities when it comes to comp. Make sure those people that are doing what we want them to do and are succeeding in our organization, they're seeing that in that comp, so it drives those behaviors and it keeps them around.
Say, Andrew, I'm sorry to also interrupt. I want to point out that Andrew's contact information and CorTalent's information is in the chat. You've got so much great material here, Andrew. Is CorTalent willing to share some of these slides for folks who want to kind of deep dive back into some of what you covered today?
Yeah, absolutely. We can share the
Excerpt.
slides, and we'd like to share a trial assessment as well. If anybody
Yep.
has an applicant that is in their process, they want to try and see if they can differentiate that applicant from others, we're happy to give a free trial assessment to anybody who's interested.
Yes, thanks, Andrew. And we're including that special offer in our email recap, which you'll all receive later today. When we send out next month's invitation, we're going to send out a recap of today's presentation, as well as details on how to take advantage of that really high value free offer from CorTalent. You're absolutely going to want to connect with them and get acquainted. So Andrew, sorry to have to cut you short. We absolutely appreciate the value you shared today. There was so much there. Thank you.
Sorry for running
joining us.
long. Thank you.
No, it's good stuff, and it's really, really timely and so